Okay, so let's fire up this unit test and see some things that make it a unit test, and also see some things that can make it stop being a unit test. And then we'll fire up the acceptance test, well, to show you what's involved there, and also because it just looks cool. And then maybe go into some of the things that are in between functional tests and API tests. But firing this one up, one of the cool things, I like Xdebug and stepwise debugging. And this works pretty well, so let's edit our configuration, our run configuration in PHP Storm, and I'm going to set it so that I'm only going to run my unit tests when we run Codeception. Now that's going to limit it to tests that are in the unit folder, and now I've got some breakpoints set already. I want to debug the run of Codeception. And you'll see it hits this breakpoint running before all the tests, where I'm going to new up a instance of my class. So when I new up that instance of the class, it's going to run the construct function, of course, and it's going to do this set rtrackables. Oh, and I've set a breakpoint there too. Okay, so it's setting the array, and then it's going to come back. And oh wait, I did miss this one because this wasn't originally here when I wrote the unit test. But this is something that's interesting in the fact that I'm newing up an instance of another class inside this class. And that means something very important. That means that the ability to construct this class depends on the existence of this class. And that's where your problems can begin. So let's just stop this here and investigate. So this is in the same folder, and so it can be grabbed pretty easily. And it's a function that can grab some information and process it that I'll use later in some of these other functions in the repo. So this will actually run, and I suppose I could run the unit. Let's go ahead and just run the test and show that it passes. Okay, so I'm all green. So it will run even though I've set this up. But what if instead of this I did something like mark equals db table fixtures, and I'm just completely making this up, but let's just do a get. So now of course I'm using the db accessor from Laravel, which should have been added up there, shouldn't it? How odd. So let's try that again. So that's the facade. Okay, so now not only is the creation of this class dependent upon the existence of this class, it is now also dependent upon the ability to grab an instance of the Illuminate support facade DB. What happens when we run the test now? It fails. It fails only because we cannot get that facade. We cannot get that facade because we have not included Laravel as a requirement for our unit test, nor should we. This is where you'll find that you cannot write unit tests. And the process of removing those sorts of dependencies will get you a long way toward making testable code that is modularized to such an extent that you only include dependencies when you absolutely need them and in an isolated fashion. How do you do it? That's a little tough. You can look at some of my tests that I've written in other repositories. I'm getting a little better at it, but yeah, it's tough. So I don't really like the existence of this, but I'm not going to change it just yet because it is still clean enough to be testable. What we might do is do another public function set synced user repo and grab this code and put it inside that setter. But of course that means that any other code that is going to use the patient add events repo needs to first new up the patient ed events repo, and then if they actually wanted to use it, they would have to do this set synced user repo to call the setter in here. So it gets a little complicated, and you got to balance out the requirements for using the class versus the testability of the class. But I'm going to go ahead and accept this, and let's go back to our debug just to finish it out. So if we go through, it sets the trackables and news up that repo, which is okay. Now it's set. And the next place we're going to hit is my assertion. And so this is going to assert that when I do this, which I'm doing here, it's going to return this R trackables. This R trackables is, of course, the array that I'm looking for. And this is the assertion being handled, and so you see nothing was thrown, and so we're all good to go in green. And of course, as it runs through the other tests, it's going to hit those breakpoints, but yeah, those aren't important. These are the ones that I was concerned about.